Well, a very special guest joining us here on Turnpike Talk. It's Steve Jervis, the head coach of the Lackawanna Trail Lions. After an 11-2 2024 season, we're 5 weeks away from that first week of Friday Night Football. It's got to feel good. I know you guys have been doing 7-on-7s. You've really been getting ready all winter and spring and summer, and the fall is almost here, Coach. You feeling ready for this?
Yeah, definitely a very exciting time of the year. I think it's exciting, for us as coaches, our players, but I think for the whole area. I think where we live, high school football is a big part of it. As you mentioned, we're the season's never really over. You're always kind of doing things with, off-season lifting and conditioning and stuff. In July is when we really get into do some 7-on-7s. And I think, once you start to see other teams and other helmets and other jerseys, it gets exciting, and we know the kickoff of the opening day is right around the corner. And we like to just go against some local teams and get ready, our pass game. Everybody jokes, we don't throw the ball a lot. However, it's great for our spacing and things like that. It's great defensively for our communication and our checks. And just to see which kids, we always graduating some kids and see which kids are going to kind of be ready to play at that level for the season too.
Well, what have you noticed about this year's team? We were chatting a bit. Your youngest one is the youngest one, right? He's the youngest in the family. He's now a big boy now. He's going to be a senior this year. You obviously bring back Isaac Ryan, a tremendous running back in that backfield, a backfield that's always so dominant. Do you have, I always like to ask, is there an identity that you can sense maybe for this 2025 team? Obviously, we haven't reached official practices yet. We're still a while away from games, but running through the 7-on-7s, how they've been in the gym, do you sense an identity for this specific groups yet?
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt about it. I think our senior leadership is, and we've been blessed with a lot of good senior leadership over the years. But this year in particular, and being Tyler is my son. Like, I know this group very well, from T-ball, Little League, all the way up through the junior Lions. They've been successful. It's just a good group. They really get along well. There's good chemistry. They're hard workers, and they're very talented. So I think looking at our team this year, we have some nice mixes, some good sized kids up front, experienced. We do have our leading passer back in Tyler, our leading rusher in Isaac Ryan. Holden Edwards is going to be taking over at fullback, is kind of recouping from a knee injury, but he's back stronger and faster than he was even last year. But I think, again, the key in, for us, in a small town is, we need to be pretty good at what we do, and running the wing tee and trying to spreading the ball around as much as we can. Obviously we have to, replace Max Kimmel, who was a 4-year starter at our X receiver, an all-state kid. Logan Edwards was a very, very good fullback. Demetrius Douglas. These are guys that we, Brian Gow did a great job up front for us as well. So, those are going to be some of the challenges is replacing those guys.
Yeah, and just looking at your schedule, it's very similar to last year's as far as the teams you're playing and the order in which you're playing. Do you feel like that may work to your advantage, disadvantage, them knowing your team? I know a lot of divisional teams in the NFL, like, they're more competitive, but just knowing the teams and stuff, do you feel more prepared going into the season?
Yeah, I think there's probably a little bit more of a comfort level. I mean, and everybody says, who are your rivals? What are your big games? I think they're all big. I think every team we play in this area, there's a lot of, just good programs, top to bottom, well coached. So week one, Tunkhannock, that's kind of one of our neighbor, schools, or where we border each other. So that always, promotes a lot of excitement and things like that. Western Wayne's coming off, a fantastic season. Then we have to go to Crispin Field and play Berwick. We know that whole tradition, obviously, ton of respect, for Coach Curry. And when I was in high school, he was the coach at Berwick, and, I was able to work his camps a little bit and things like that over the years. So even before we get into league play, there's going to be some big games going on. But I think it's, how we always approach it every year is, it's kind of cliche, but, 1 week at a time. Our goal is to really be playing our best football come November. I think obviously you want to be competitive throughout, but if you want to have a special season, I think if you can win in November,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That definitely that's important.
Ricky and I love to talk off the air about your run-heavy offense, and that's what we were just talking about a little bit before we started the pod. Is it satisfying for you just to watch one of your running backs run over 6 or 7 guys on a play? I forget which game it was. We were watching highlights the other day, and he gets the handoff. He's running up the middle. They can't tackle the guy. How satisfying is that for you as a coach to watch one of your boys just taking on 1-on-11 an entire defense and go 60 yards to the crib and score a touchdown?
Well, definitely, and I think I know which play you're talking about. I think that might have been Isaac last year, but I mean, he's a very talented young man. Really, the key to the wing T more than anything is we try to make it as easy as possible for the offensive lineman. I think skill kids, quarterbacks, we have fullback, we have 2 halves. Like we can teach those kids on, but when you can eliminate all the gray area for your offensive linemen, I think that goes a long ways.
Yeah, and I'm from Central New York. I always joke it's not really a big thing there for high school football, but moving here, it's insane how much, how many people come out to watch these games, how big of a deal it is, but also the skill level of these players and stuff. How satisfying is it to see these players, go on to college and, have success there too?
Yeah, I mean, I think high school football, I was fortunate to play some sports in college and stuff like that, but, high school sports in general, are just such a wonderful time in these kids' lives. And, I feel like it's such a vessel. They can learn so much through these sports. I'm kind of biased, obviously, but, specifically high school football, the lessons that you can learn, it's hard to learn them just only in a classroom. But, on the football field, the preparation, the commitment, the dedication, the toughness, physically, the mental toughness, the demanding aspects of it. I always tell our kids is, it's a tough game for tough kids, but, in reality, life is tough at times. And I think it really can prepare them for things they're going to see along the way. And I think, like you mentioned, the competition all top to bottom, and especially in District 2, I was fortunate last year to be the president of the PSFCA, which is our statewide coaches association. But it's amazing the respect across the state that we get in District 2. A lot of good, programs in this area, a lot of good coaches, a lot of great players come out of this area. So yeah, it's definitely a great place to coach.
How many guys could we possibly see in a backfield on a play this year? Could we? What's the highest amount of players? We could see a couple motions and get the defense off their toes a little bit.
Well, and that's definitely one of the, when you break down the wing T, like what's special about it. I could talk about the wing T for hours, but, the one thing is it gets a lot of people involved. You know what I mean? So you purposely want to keep people around the ball, and, you want to give things for the defense to look at. And, sometimes it can just be eye candy, but other times, if they don't react, we can outflank them and things. So, definitely, especially been very fortunate, if you have 3 really good kids that can run the ball, it's very difficult to key on one of them. And then, obviously if we can involve our quarterback in the run game too, in the play action pass game, the big thing I always say is, people might say, this or that about the wing T, but if you truly ask a defensive coordinator, about different offenses they have to stop, not a lot of defensive coordinators love the wing T. It is, and I was a defensive coordinator at one point, so that's kind of how this whole thing started. But it can be, again, obviously we have to execute. Now, that's what it comes down to. But, it can give you a lot to look at.
Well, shoot, if I'm looking at the box score and there's 500 rushing yards on the other team, I wouldn't be very happy either if I was a defensive coordinator. Is there one guy in this team that, you're the guy to ask about under the radar players? You're around the team every single day. We get to October, week 5, week 6. Who's the one player in your eyes that people are going to look at and be like, oh, shoot, he's been a heck of a player for this Lackawanna Trail team?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of already, Isaac might have been that guy. Lucas Gumbo was a very good running back, for in 21, 22, 23. And then, Isaac last year had a phenomenal year for us, and I think, the other 2 backs that, we have Holden Edwards and Sean Dwyer working out at the other 2 spots, we had to fill for graduation. I think, they're poised and ready, and I think we have some sophomores coming up too that have worked very, very hard. In Carter Edwards, which is Holden's younger brother, and Hayden Reed. We have a couple other kids, Braden Martinez is a senior. Going to kind of, be kind of a backup, but yet very talented. I feel like we have some pretty good depth. Colby Stanton's another one in the backfield. Even our backup quarterback, Lucas Philippek's going to be a sophomore. He's 6'4", 190, very good basketball player. So even when he's at quarterback, we can use Tyler, my son at other spots as well. So, it's going to be interesting. I mean, we have to stay healthy. It's, that's kind of the name of the game in single A football. We never have a ton of kids on our roster. So we try to do as much injury prevention exercise as we can, but that's really, how we weather the storm, week in and week out. That's usually, something that's very important for us.
And it's crucial to stay healthy when you want to play 12, 13, 14 weeks into the season. I know last year, I'm sure the team's pretty hungry after the way last year ended. I remember being at that game, Muncie versus Lackawanna Trail, and it was punch for punch on offense. 47-46 was that final score. But I'm sure since that clock hit 0, they've been thinking about it. They want to get back to states, I imagine, and deeper into that tournament.
Yeah, over the years, not only us, but, so other programs from District 2, it's we've been to the state championship in 2018. We went to the state semifinal in 2019. I thought we had a very good team in 2023, ran into Steelton High Spire, which was super talented, a great program. And last year, I think we were playing really well at the right time. That young man from Muncie was, I thought their whole team was good. Don't get me wrong, well coached. But that running back,
Austin Johnson.
Yes, he was. And we knew he was going to be a tough kid. Obviously, at Oklahoma State, and wrestling scholarship, that doesn't happen by accident. But him and Isaac were really on display. Two just very, very talented high school football players right there. And we were playing very good defensively. I have two wonderful, great defensive coordinators, and Jimmy Bacchetti and Jeff Stage. They were. It was like you're saying. Anytime you have over 1,000 yards and 44 first downs in a high school football game, I just kind of wish we could have finished it. But hey, hats off to them. And but hopefully, we'll see what happens this year. Maybe back in a situation similar. Who knows?
And, every single year is crucial to growing a player and a team. With Isaac, I know you mentioned that last game, but he's going into his senior year. How much can he even develop in a year to maybe, push past and win a game like Muncie last year?
Yeah, I think there's something about senior leadership. We've had very good leadership for, in a lot of different seasons that I've coached. But, when you have that group of kids who've played together, have that really good chemistry, I think, and Isaac's part of that. There's no doubt about it. I think that's really what makes it tough. When you get a bunch of kids that say, we're going to do this, it makes it tough, and you can ask a lot of these coaches in the area, when you do get that right combination, it's really fun. It's special. And it's kind of, we've been fortunate because sometimes you have to wait to get that right mix. You know what I mean? I think we've had that right mix a couple different times in my coaching career at Lackawanna Trail. And, I'm very excited about this season, though. And we have some really good juniors, too. And we have some really good sophomores, but I think the senior leadership, that might be the difference.
It's going to be here soon. The season is slowly creeping up on us. I was talking with one of the workers at the gym I go to about the NFL season. I remember back in February, we were like, the draft is 2 months away. Flew by like this. Now training camp for NFL is starting, practices beginning August 4th for you guys. And then August 22nd, it's week 1 against Tunkhannock. Coach Jervis, appreciate you taking some time to come in, check out the studio with us for this first episode of this show, and spend a little time. And, of course, we'll be making our way up north to good old Factoryville and come check out some of your games. And, of course, when you guys are on the road, we'll definitely come by for our Friday Night Football show. It's going to be a fun season for sure.
Well, Alaina and Nick, I can't thank you guys enough for having me on, especially for your first show, your inaugural show. Hopefully I did okay. And
it's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Look forward to
You're
seeing
a pro.
you guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you guys up in Tunnel Hill.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.